The United States Coast Guard has rescued a man and his dog as Hurricane Helene fast approached them when his boat became disabled and started taking on water 25 miles out to sea. The sailor and his dog were on a 36-foot sailboat on Thursday when the boat started taking on water, leaving the man and his canine stranded in the ocean approximately 25 miles off Sanibel Island, with no help or support nearby, according to a statement the U.S. Coast Guard Air Station Clearwater released early Friday morning. Coast Guard crews responded to the boater's distress call and rushed to the man's location approximately 25 miles offshore from Sanibel Island near Fort Myers, the authorities said. A successful rescue attempt was made and the unidentified sailor and his dog were saved and brought back to land. Officials have not disclosed why the man was out to sea while small craft advisories and hurricane warnings had already been issued in the area as Hurricane Helene was expected to make landfall. U.S. Coast Guard Southeast Twitter feed Air Station Clearwater said they saved a man and his dog Thursday during Hurricane Helene after his 36-foot sailboat became disabled and started taking on water approximately 25 miles off Sanibel Island. As someone who has had that helicopter overhead, I can tell you firsthand how terrifying it can be to see your boat taking on water and potentially going down, especially when you live on it. When I made the call for help from the Coast Guard, it's because the boat was taking on water. There was already a few feet over the floorboards by the time we noticed. It was blowing 20-25 knots on the nose, and it was hard to tell there was any water on the boat at all from outside. Couldn't hear the high water alarm and all the bilge pumps were working to full capacity, but the water coming in was faster than they could get the water out. I went inside and started searching for the leak. After about 10 minutes of searching for the leak, I couldn't find it, and I looked at the batteries, and the water was just about to come over the top of the battery terminals, which for me meant I would probably lose my 12-volt system and then lose the ability to call for help. So I had to make a decision. And I threw the ditch kit in the dinghy and called for help. Called the Coast Guard Mayday call that we were going to lose the boat, because it's the only time I could make that call. As soon as I lost the 12 volt, my ability to call was gone and we were truly on our own. So I called for help and let the Coast Guard know what was going on, and then I continued to look for the leak, but I found it as the helicopter arrived. So I found the leak, plugged it, and then we were no longer in danger. So I let the Coast Guard know I found the leak. We lost communication. Everything turned out to be okay. But it was a very, very tough decision to make.
It's about the most terrifying thing that has ever happened. So, yeah, probably talk later. The guy in the console is gonna go get a pump from another boat, a high volume pump. The Coast Guard helicopter left. We're all alone now.
Here's another one from the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard rescued 4 people off a sinking boat south of the Dry Tortugas National Park early Monday morning. This is from back in February. The individuals were rescued amid heavy seas and weather caused by a passing storm after an emergency position indicating radio beacon, an EPIRB, was activated on board their vessel. Watchstanders at the Coast Guard's 7th District Command Center at Sector Key West received the distress call and diverted the crew of the Coast Guard cutter Charles David Jr. toward the boat's position approximately 35 miles south of the Dry Tortugas. An MH-65 Dolphin helicopter crew out of the Coast Guard Station Miami was also launched, headed to that scene. The air and cutter crews reached the sinking boat shortly after midnight on Monday. A rescue swimmer was lowered from the helicopter to the sinking boat, where it was determined that one passenger on board required emergency medical attention. However, heavy seas prevented the aircrew from being able to hoist those aboard directly to the helicopter. The crew of the Charles David Jr. launched a small boat to transfer all the individuals off the sinking sailboat and bring them to the cutter, where the passenger requiring emergency treatment was then hoisted to the aircraft and flown to the Lower Keys Medical Center in Key West for further treatment. The other 3 people were brought back to Key West on the cutter. We were fortunate to be able to rescue 4 people and bring them to shore safely today, said Captain Jason Ingram, Sector Commander at U.S. Coast Guard Sector Key West. These were extremely challenging conditions to conduct a rescue operation in. I urge all mariners to frequently check their safety gear and monitor weather forecasts from reliable sources like the National Weather Service. 4 lives were saved today due to the quick actions from our Coast Guard crews and because the mariners had an EPIRB on board that pinpointed the distress location. What this teaches us is that no one, no matter how prepared they or their boat are, is immune to these casualties. Something can go wrong no matter what we do. Look at the Beijing disaster. A multi-million-dollar yacht thought to be basically unsinkable was smashed down and pulled to the bottom in minutes, despite all the money in the world and pumps and safety gear. Things can go wrong. They will go wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it except when they do, to keep a clear head and call for help when necessary. So what's the lesson here for the cruising sailor? Other than the obvious, have an EPIRB and a life raft and be prepared and all that stuff. But there's one thing to do before all that, or on top of all that important stuff, and that's location. Do everything in your power to not be in the wrong place when things go wrong. And I'm not blaming anybody like the guy and his dog or anyone else. I'm just deducing a lesson here. Make conservative decisions, sometimes bordering on extreme. If a big storm system is going to hit Florida, and you can, head north as fast as possible. Take a 3-day hop up to the Chesapeake to find safety, or get into a protected area, secure the boat with every line you have on board, and head inland to safety. Get off the water. We can make these conservative decisions in lesser situations too. I was scheduled to make a 40-mile delivery the other day, and wind looked good up to the point where the delivery was going to take place. Wind was actually blowing in the right direction for a change, which is rare. Wind from the east when the boat needed to go west. It would be about 20 knots on the back quarter all day. A great day for sailing, but I would be with a boat full of people who aren't really sailors. I made the conservative decision and rescheduled the delivery, and that day turned into 30 plus knots from the east. If the forecast is bordering on your comfortable limit, and mine's 22 knots is my comfortable limit, and you have to leave room for that forecast to be wrong, plus or minus about 10 knots in either direction. And in this case, it was 10 knots of wind wrong. It would have been dangerous in 30 plus knots on a downwind with an inexperienced crew. I made the tough call and I rescheduled. We did the delivery yesterday in 10 to 15 knots on a downwind, and it was lovely. It's hard to know when to go and when not to go, but you'll never regret not going and waiting until a better window. You'll always regret the decision that leads to you and your crew ending up in the water. Until next time, friends, keep the heavy side down, but not too far down. Be safe out there.